The courtroom is tense as Judge Amy Coney Barrett adjusts her glasses and leans forward from the bench. In a voice that carries both authority and an unmistakable edge, she addresses Jasmine Crockett directly. Ms. Crockett, before we proceed, I'd like to clarify your credentials for the record. You graduated from Southern Methodist University Law, correct? Jasmine nods, her expression calm. Barrett presses on. That's not exactly considered one of the nation's premier law schools, is it? A murmur stirs in the gallery, but Barrett doesn't pause. Many of my colleagues, and certainly most who sit on this bench, come from Ivy League backgrounds. Some might argue there's a difference between, say, Yale Law and SMU. Jasmine's jaw tightens slightly. Barrett's words hang in the air, sharp as a blade. Barrett continues, given the gravity of these proceedings, I'd like the record to reflect the court's awareness of all participants' backgrounds. After all, the public must have confidence in the qualifications of those before them. She glances at her fellow judges, a thin smile crossing her face. And Ms. Crockett, do you believe your education adequately prepared you for matters of this magnitude, or is this your first experience at this level? A hush falls over the room. Every eye is on Jasmine, waiting to see if she'll hesitate, fight back, or simply absorb the insult. The opening shots have been fired. Jasmine looks Judge Barrett directly in the eyes, her voice cool and unwavering. With respect, Your Honor, I'm very proud of my SMU law degree. It's not the Ivy League, but it's where I learned to fight for clients no one else would take, and to win cases others thought impossible. She pauses, letting the words settle. I've read the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, and every ethics opinion cited by this court. My education may have started at SMU, but my experience comes from the real world, not private clubs or legacy halls. Barrett lifts an eyebrow. Jasmine continues. You say this bench is built on pedigree, but justice isn't supposed to be reserved for the elite, is it? Is the law only as good as the university on the diploma, or does it depend on the courage of those willing to argue for it? A ripple passes through the gallery, but Jasmine doesn't wait. I'd like to ask, do you believe a judge's authority should rest on her school or on her commitment to fairness and the Constitution? Barrett shifts slightly in her seat, the courtroom tension mounting. Jasmine holds her gaze, steady and unyielding. I came here to fight for justice, not to compete for titles. If that's a problem, then maybe it's not my credentials this court should be questioning. Barrett's composure remains, but her voice now carries a subtle challenge. Ms. Crockett, I respect your passion. However, our legal system was built by those with the highest training, and with that comes a certain standard. I did not intend to offend, but there's a reason why top law firms and federal benches draw from the Ivy League. Excellence breeds excellence. She glances at the panel of judges beside her. Perhaps you feel your journey makes you unique, but this court must consider the precedents, traditions, and expertise that come from established institutions. It isn't bias. It's about ensuring that only the best represent justice at the highest level. Jasmine remains silent for a moment, studying Barrett. Barrett adds, her tone crisp, I have nothing against state schools, but public confidence relies on knowing that those who interpret the law were prepared by the best. She looks pointedly at Jasmine. If you feel your experience qualifies you, then show us through argument, not through stories. A faint murmur runs through the room, but Jasmine's eyes don't leave Barrett's. The air is thick with challenge, and the next move is Jasmine's. Jasmine's voice is steady, But this time, there's unmistakable steel in her words. Your Honor, with all due respect, tradition is too often used as a shield for exclusion. When I started at SMU, no one in my family had ever worn a cap and gown. I worked night shifts, missed meals, and studied in libraries that closed at midnight. I wasn't groomed for the Ivy League. I had to build my own ladder. She glances briefly at the judges, then straight at Barrett. I learned the law in the real world, representing tenants evicted without cause, women denied pay for equal work, families broken by bureaucracy. No Ivy League name would have helped me face down a landlord or walk a battered client into court at 2 a.m. Jasmine doesn't pause. I admire excellence, but it doesn't only come from privilege or legacy. Sometimes it comes from adversity, from fighting for a seat at the table where none was offered. And too often, the law is decided by those who've never had to live by its harshest consequences. She holds up a worn legal pad. This isn't just about my degree, it's about whether this court values grit as much as pedigree. A hush falls over the room. Jasmine's story has changed the tenor of the debate and put the focus squarely on what truly defines a lawyer's worth. Barrett's tone softens, though she keeps her posture formal. Ms. Crockett, I appreciate your candor. I have always respected those who rise through adversity. Still, this court must uphold standards that ensure our rulings are beyond reproach. The public looks to us for certainty and trust. That trust is built on more than just hard work. It is built on demonstrated excellence and tradition. She gestures toward the row of judges. We do not dismiss those who come from different backgrounds, but precedent, reputation, and rigorous academic discipline are what have guided the courts for generations. It is not about legacy for its own sake, but about preserving the rule of law. Barrett looks at Jasmine, her eyes searching. You speak of fighting for the unheard. That is admirable. But if everyone could set aside tradition, how would we measure readiness for this bench? Isn't the purpose of standards to protect the very people you claim to serve? She pauses, as if hoping for affirmation. This court cannot simply redefine excellence every time someone breaks the mold. We must balance heart with history. Barrett's words trail off, the tension unresolved. All eyes shift back to Jasmine, whose resolve is only growing. Jasmine's voice sharpens as she leans in. With respect, Judge Barrett, tradition can only be trusted when it's honest. Too often, standards become a barrier for those without the right background, but a pass for those with connections. In my first months as a public defender, I watched colleagues from elite schools fumble basic cases, while state school lawyers won justice for people no one else would help. Yet guess who got the invitations to join your clerkships? She lets the question hang. You say this court honors rigor and history, but how many times has prestige been confused with principle? How many Ivy League graduates have sat here, never questioned, never tested, simply because of a name on a resume? Jasmine turns to the other judges. Standards should be measured in service, not just in citations or alma maters. If we only measure worth by tradition, we perpetuate a system where new voices are kept out, not welcomed in. She locks eyes with Barrett. I'm not here to break tradition for its own sake. I'm here because justice loses its meaning when only the privileged get to define it. Jasmine's words become more direct. My clients never asked about my degree. They wanted to know if I would fight for them. When I stood before a judge to keep a mother and child in their home, they didn't care if my law school was on a list. They cared if I knew the law and if I'd go the distance. She lifts a file. This isn't theory. This is the record. Over 100 cases tried, dozens won for people who had nothing but hope. I didn't need an Ivy League network to learn how to argue for their lives. I needed perseverance and a court willing to listen. Jasmine lets the file fall to the table. Credentials matter, but not more than compassion, not more than courage. This court's legitimacy comes from its ability to deliver justice to all, not just to the pedigreed. She turns back to Barrett. So if this is a test of qualifications, let's make it about impact, not ancestry, about actions, not assumptions. Jasmine leans forward, determination in her tone. Judge Barrett, if this bench claims to value precedent, let's look at precedent honestly. History is full of judges who changed the law and society, not because they had the right credentials, but because they had the courage to dissent when the majority was wrong. Justice Thurgood Marshall, for example, was denied entry to his state's law school because of segregation, yet he rewrote the law for generations. Ruth Bader Ginsburg faced systematic discrimination, yet her so-called outsider status never prevented her from reshaping equal protection jurisprudence. You, Judge Barrett, have authored decisions that critics from your own alma mater have called into question. If elite credentials guaranteed perfect wisdom, the Supreme Court would never issue split decisions or reversals. Excellence is proven in action, not on a university seal. Let's talk about my record. I have defended clients against powerful corporations, forced settlements in cases others said were unwinnable, and won reversals on appeal with written arguments now cited in law reviews. Not once did my diploma close a door. People with power did. I challenge this court. If you value the law, examine my wins and losses, not my graduation year. If you value justice, measure my work by the lives changed, not the names on my resume. I invite any scrutiny so long as it's applied to everyone here equally. Jasmine produces a sealed envelope and addresses the court. I'd like to submit a letter for the record. It comes from the former dean of Judge Barrett's own law school. I reached out as part of due diligence when this court's concerns about my qualifications were raised. She carefully opens the envelope and reads aloud. I have known both Amy Coney Barrett and Jasmine Crockett as students of law. Judge Barrett's intellect is formidable, but I would caution any court against equating pedigree with capacity for justice. Jasmine Crockett, though from a lesser-known school, demonstrated the kind of rigor and empathy that elevates the practice of law. Diversity in experience is essential to justice. Without it, the law becomes brittle, serving only those who can already command it. Jasmine looks up at the judges, holding the letter for all to see. Even your mentors know that a bench built on only one kind of experience is weaker, not stronger. If we want real justice, it starts with admitting the limits of our own assumptions. Jasmine places the letter into the official record. The room is silent, the balance of authority now subtly shifting. The courtroom, once firmly under Judge Barrett's control, now seems to lean toward Jasmine. Barrett sits back, her posture more rigid. The judges beside her shift, sensing the mood has changed. Barrett tries to steady her voice. Ms. Crockett, I did not intend to undermine your work. I simply meant to uphold the traditions that have guided this institution. But perhaps I should reconsider the weight I assign to backgrounds and affiliations. She glances at the letter from her former dean, then to the faces of her peers. I see now that justice may require more than precedent and protocol. Perhaps I have been too quick to measure merit by familiar standards. In my career, I have struggled against the perception that only one path leads to the bench, but your arguments remind me that the law was not meant to be preserved in amber. It is meant to serve the people. Barrett's words hang in the air. For the first time, uncertainty flickers in her eyes. She faces Jasmine again. If you believe your experience prepares you for the responsibilities of this court, then I invite you to demonstrate it, not with pedigree, but with principle. The gallery murmurs approval. Jasmine nods, her confidence unshaken. The tide has turned. The standard bearer of the old guard is now, at least for a moment, the student. Jasmine rises, the letter still in hand. She faces Barrett directly, her voice unwavering and clear enough for every corner of the courtroom. A true judge is not defined by her diploma, but by her justice. This bench is measured by the courage to listen, to change, and to serve those outside its doors. Tradition matters, but justice, real justice, is what we deliver when we set our pride aside. She pauses for a heartbeat. 12 seconds of clarity. We are trusted not because of where we learned, but because of what we do when learning meets humanity. That's the only standard that should matter. Jasmine sits. The words linger, leaving even Barrett silent. For the first time since the hearing began, the court feels like a place of genuine possibility. No one dares speak. Every eye is on Barrett, but for once, her answer is not required. The silence that fills the courtroom after Jasmine's final words is total. Not a shuffle, not a cough, just the weight of a moment when something fundamental has shifted. Reporters stop typing. The judges on the bench look at each other, uncertain whether to resume the session or simply let the silence speak. Judge Barrett lowers her gaze, her hands folded tightly before her. For the first time, her authority does not come from her title, but from her willingness to listen. A clerk quietly enters Jasmine's closing statement into the record. The gallery, filled with lawyers, students, and everyday citizens, understands they have witnessed something more than a debate about credentials. They have seen a system, however briefly, open itself to new standards. No gavel drops, no ruling is read, but the room feels transformed. Later, as people leave the courtroom, a sense of respect for Jasmine lingers in the air. On social media and legal blogs, her 12-second phrase begins to trend. Students and young lawyers replay the video, sharing it as a rallying cry. A true judge is not defined by her diploma, but by her justice. That afternoon, court staff post the hearing transcript online. Within hours, the hashtag jacking justice not diplomas is everywhere. Jasmine's challenge to tradition has become more than a moment. It is now a movement, and everyone in that room knows. After today, nothing here will ever be quite the same.